Yashwantrao Chavan Maharashtra Open University recently held a 2-day national symposium on food, health and education for all, the role of open and distance learning. The program became a great event because of the presence of a number of Vice Chancellors, and it proved to be highly result-oriented because of the thorough discussion on the elements involved in achieving the goal of food, health and education for all. In this program, you get an opportunity to listen to the discussion on a specific target, education for all. Participating in this discussion are Professor John Daniel, Professor Ram Takavle and Professor K.B. Powar. Professor V.S. Prasad is coordinating this discussion. I'm sure you'll definitely find this program on a specific target, education for all, making an addition to your knowledge.
Friends, welcome for today's discussion on education for all. Education is an important social activity. It has a transformative role, it has a developmental role. Today it is accepted by world community that it is necessary to have education for all. But the question is how we can achieve this goal of education for all. We are very happy that we have in the studios 3 experts, very eminent experts in the field of education. We'll be discussing about different dimensions of this concern and this problem. We have with us Sir John Daniel, Assistant Director General, UNESCO, who will be sharing with us not only the role of UNESCO, but also the international experience of different countries and its relevance to the developing countries, how education for all can be achieved, what is the role of UNESCO and what is the experience of other developing countries. We have also with us Professor Takwale, who was former Vice Chancellor of YCMOU, Indira Gandhi National Open University and Pune University, and eminent educational administrator. He has a rich experience in not only designing educational programs but also application of ICT technologies for educational purposes. I think he will be sharing with us how ICT technologies can be used to provide education for all. We have also with us Professor K.B. Powar, former Vice Chancellor of Shivaji University and also former Secretary General of Indian Association of Indian Universities. He has a rich experience in this field of quality of distance education and also internationalization of higher education. He will be sharing with us the concerns of quality of education for all. I think we may start with Sir John Daniel. Sir, I see, what is the experience of other countries in providing education for all? I think you are presently in the UNESCO playing a very important role as in charge for education. Even though this is a very noble objective, countries like India are facing a number of problems in achieving this target. By 2015, we want to achieve this target, but we find that many limitations are there. What is the experience of other developing countries in this matter, and what is the role of UNESCO in this matter?
Well, the role of UNESCO goes right back to the very early days. In fact, in UNESCO's constitution, which was signed by the founding member states in 1946, it talks about equal opportunities for education for all. And I think it's probably true to say that those founders of UNESCO would be surprised if they came back today to find that 67 years later, we still are a long way from education for all in many countries. There wasn't a great deal of attention to education for all from the late 1940s until 1990, there was the period of decolonization, there was the Cold War, and then in 1990, UNESCO and others convened a meeting in Jomtien, Thailand, to look at the situation, and discovered with some alarm that there was a huge gap and that we were a long way from education for all. So some targets were set, and then life went on. UNESCO does two things. First of all, my staff in Paris and around the world help countries with individual parts of that. So if a country says, we'd like help in achieving the gender target, then we will send experts to help them. Or another country might say, yes, we're interested in developing a network of early childhood education. What can we do about that? But the second part, which in fact is very relevant because I've just come from a meeting in Delhi that was concerned with that, is that we're charged with coordinating this great international movement towards education for all. We do that in a number of ways, but in particular, each year we publish what we call the annual Global Monitoring Report on Education for All, which says where we've got to. That was in fact launched in Delhi for the whole world 2 weeks ago, and this week we've had a 2-day meeting in Delhi where that was reviewed by a group called the High Level Group, which consists of ministers from developing countries. So Minister Joshi was here from India, the minister from China, the minister from Burkina Faso, the vice president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and so on. Then you have representatives of international agencies that are also involved in this great campaign, the World Bank, UNICEF, UNFPA, UNAIDS. Then you have the countries that give money directly, USA, UK, France, and then you have the civil society organizations. One of the important roles of UNESCO is to involve the civil society in this, because I think it's been shown, and very notably in India, that if you can get the local people to own these goals, then good things happen. So, what have we learned from this? One of the things we do is to try and help countries share their experience. And I was very struck when I started coming to India after I joined UNESCO by the richness of the diversity of the experience in the different Indian states. So earlier this year, back in September, we had a meeting where we brought together officials from 8 states at different stages in this process, in order that they could compare notes. And it was a very entertaining meeting because there was obviously a good deal of competition between these states to show that they were better than the other state. But it really was very informative and showed a number of things, but particularly how decentralizing control of education to the grassroots level and giving incentives to individual people is very, very powerful. So these are the sorts of things, the sorts of experiences that we're sharing around the world, and at the same time constantly holding up a mirror to states so that they can see they've still got a long way to go, but that the targets are achievable.
Okay, Sir John, you see, mainly you are focusing on UNESCO role as a knowledge inputs you are providing to the different countries about the whole process and sharing of experiences of these agencies. But from the strategies point of view, from the experience of the UNESCO, do you think that the countries like India can learn from other countries' experience in the strategy of achieving these objectives? If you are requested to advise the developing countries, what type of strategies they can adopt to achieve this objective? Before I request Professor Takwale to talk about the ICT applications, I just would like to know from you, what strategies you can suggest to the developing countries with your rich experience at the international level for achieving these objectives?
Well, let me give one example which is close to home. I think it's true to say that at the meeting that took place earlier this week, India was somewhat surprised, maybe shocked, to find that Bangladesh seemed to be doing better at this gender goal than India was, because I don't want to go into the rivalry between India and Bangladesh, but nevertheless. So how do they do this? And I think one of the things that Bangladesh has done very successfully is to show the economic value of education for girls, partly with its microcredit system, so that people see a girl's education as a very important part of her dowry and her financial worth.
Okay.
And that has led families to become much keener at having their girls educated. And that's just one small example.
That is
and often this sort of element of rivalry that we think we should actually do better than this country helps people be receptive to ideas that are coming in from somewhere else.
Okay, so the competition is a driving force to achieve the goals is one lesson. Maybe you see the participation of the people in the process is another lesson which we can learn. I think Professor Takwale is with your rich experience in the field of education, higher education and education in general. As far as the goal is concerned, there is a consensus. Everybody agrees that we have to achieve this goal. There is no second opinion on that. Even though earlier you see there was a feeling that education need not be given to all, but now it is realized that Constitution also realizes the importance, and 93rd Constitution also talks about, amendment also talks about need for education for all. But the main concern is what strategies will work. That is the main concern. Some of the strategies are giving results, some of the strategies are not giving the results. Here in this context, I think ICT application also, there is a lot of expectations on the use of ICT for achieving this target. What is your response to this?
I think I would like to look at this problem from the point of view of the education for all, and what are the important dimensions of this. We are considering the age group up to 14, that is one part. Secondly, we are considering another age group of the illiterates and the new literates. That is quite a big group, which are rather economically poor and downmost strata of the society. And third one is the need of the developing society in learning number of things, new things, and transforming itself. In fact, we know that we are entering into information society in the 20th or 21st century, and therefore information and knowledge inputs must go to everybody, and they should participate in the developmental process. One point what Sir John Daniel told us in Bangladesh success was that this Mahila groups, women's groups, was related with the economic development.
Okay.
And whenever literacy is related with economic development or development as such, then that program is successful. So one can learn 2-3 lessons. One is definitely we must use information communication technology in such a way that it covers all. That is one point. And here, interestingly enough, this university, Yashwantrao Chauhan Maharashtra Open University, has in its objective a concept of reaching as a mass university. So this university must become mass university. And when university becomes mass university, it's a question. Not with might be say 1 lakh or 5 lakh or 1 million or 2 million enrollment. It must literally go to all society, all community. Now if that is the objective of open learning system, and information communication technology is to be used with that as an approach, I think we'll have to look at it completely differently. That's one point. And therefore, what are the efforts that are being done in this country to use information communication technology to reach all this unreached? And that is the most important aspect. Now, I can see some of these are the one UGC decision at one time, nearly 25 years back, of making extension as the third dimension of the education.
Yes.
Besides teaching and research was one of the factors. And therefore, all universities started participating in the social change activities, and literacy was one of the major factors. And therefore we worked, even if going to the villages, students were working for that, and this also contributed to some sort of social change. So universities participated in the education program or literacy program. So that is one point. Secondly, rather here, when universities open business education, like Yashwantrao Chauhan Open University came up, we thought that the dropouts at the lower level must be given vocational and technical skills so they can stand on their own. So that was another experience. Now here also we used some sort of educational technology in order to educate them and give the needed skills. Third one is Indira Gandhi National Open University. We offered some such courses in which illiterates participated and be certified, because it is skill learning. And if you can demonstrate and show them that the skills could be done like this, and why and how they can be you can explain it, they learn it. My whole point is that unless you rather link all this development with the activities related to income generation or value addition, this whole program is not likely to succeed. That's one point. I mean, this is my experience as the Vice Chancellor of Pune University here also. Now, how to use it? University Grants Commission is trying to create network of all these colleges, universities. At one point, they are generating content also. In ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, is putting up one satellite. After a year or so, it will be in the sky, offering nearly 72 channels and nearly 14 transponders, and while having the KU band footprints on all over the country. So that is another, and then all these channels will be available only for education. So that is another part of it. Thirdly, this KU band will be giving us broadband connectivity. So that is another part of it. Then there is also another attempt of the creating networks, particularly in Maharashtra. This Maharashtra Knowledge Corporation has created ground segment of nearly 3,500 centers, which are all connected through internet. And complete paperless atmosphere is going on, and complete e-governance, front-end e-governance is entirely with such sort of approach. Yashwantrao Maharashtra Open University is also using now this distributed classroom. IGMO is using distributed classroom. So with all these technologies coming up, possibly distributed classroom is going to be a reality in no time. And also another you will get WLL, wireless local loads, that is coming up. And in rural areas, well, 30-40 villages could be reached through some sort of a tower and wireless local loop technology. DTH will be coming up with all these other broadcast satellites. So that will be coming up. With so much of technology coming up, question is how we can reach unreached places.
Yes.
And how can we just use the technology for educating all. But educating all will simultaneously meaning how to link the education with the developmental processes. So that will be the whole part of it. And I believe that these technological possibilities are many.
Professor Takwale, you see, but there is one apprehension in the minds of many people. In Indian context, when access to technology is limited, it is limited to the urban or semi-urban areas. And lack of education is a serious problem in rural areas.
Right.
So the technology is, access is limited to the urban and semi-urban areas. And the problem of lack of education is a problem of rural areas. How do you build this gap between the urban and rural is one thing. So there is a fear among the many people that it should not result in technology divide.
Right.
You also, in many of your articles, also addressed to this question also.
Actually, it is a digital divide problem.
Okay.
And this rather digital divide is coming up. Educated, uneducated, rural, urban, poor, rich. I mean, this is coming in a number of ways. Now, how do they face this whole problem? I mean, that is the whole point. So the point is, what you need actually for reaching all is some sort of a national and regional infrastructure with information communication technology access points going to each and every village. Each and every village somehow linked with the local areas with all the functionalities, not only for education. It must be agriculture, it must be marketing, it must be health, it must be other aspects. And they should find out support for their livelihood and support for their communication in all this. Can one create such sort of system in which this community learning and information centers can spread to all villages and they start operating, somebody giving service, he is earning on it, and it is a self-sustainable type of a system. I think that is one of the attempt some of the agencies are trying to do.
So the learning, if it is related and linked to the living activities,
Exactly.
learning and living must be closely related. I think it leads us to another problem. I think Professor Pawar, you may be able to respond to it. The whole question of quality of education also is related to this, because when we are talking about a technology mediated education particularly, in the open and distance education also, he is able to provide access to large number, but what about the quality of the education? This is a general apprehension among the many people. How do you react to this question of quality?
Now, if you look back in recent years, that is since independence, it's about 55 years, Indian education has undergone a very massive growth. In fact, if you look at only the figures which are available in the case of higher education, the growth has been 40 times from say 0.2 million to about 8 to 10 million today.
Okay.
In recent years, we have found out that quality must be taken care of, probably with the incoming of globalization in the 1990s, as elsewhere in the world, the quality movement has become very important. And then we have realized that one way of spreading education would be through the distance mode. It is interesting that round about in the early 90s, for example, in 1994, as far as higher education is concerned, you had the establishment of NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, then you had the establishment of the National Board of Accreditation for Technical Education. But even in distance education, though at that time there were only 5 open universities, we started in 1994 with a program, if you recall, of the Commonwealth of Learning, the UGC and the DEC, putting together the first efforts to see how quality could be brought into distance education programs. There also, when you look at it, one thing which has to be appreciated in the case of the open universities, it is that it consists of a number of subsystems. For example, the development of teaching and learning material, the production of material, the delivery, the student support services, the administration and so on. And the net result is that unless you are efficient in all these 6 or 7 subsystems, probably you will not get the result. One system can let you down. If your delivery mechanism is bad, then the whole thing collapses. Now, when we have analyzed the work of, say, Indira Gandhi National Open University, you will find that 2 or 3 things have emerged. For example, the academic programs, the materials, they are very good. In fact, in the conventional universities, we have been following most of the academic material for teaching undergraduate classes. But then the second part, delivery is suffering, or you can say the monitoring part is not of extent. And therefore, what has to be established is you have got to establish the feedback loop, and on that basis you have got to do. And this has been very restricted. When you talk of quality, I would again think you will have to, as everybody know, quality means different thing to different people, and you will have to term. One thing which we must think about is quality in terms of the objectives. The CABIC committee in 1964 laid down certain objectives for the open universities, and the principal objectives was taking education to the areas where there was no education, rural areas, mountainous terrain and so on. And the second is taking education to the people who were underprivileged, the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, the handicapped and so on. Now last year, we did a small exercise to find out how much this has been done. And we find that ultimately, while promoting the programs, the stress has been more urban-centric. And your objectives of reaching the underprivileged class, that has not been realized, most of the statistical data. Now we have got to reorient things. Look back, reorient, see that the objectives of the CABIC committee are done, and I think we'll do it. Now, I think IGNOU has recently started a few programs, the Gyan Ganga program, the Gyan Darshan program. I think they are all helping. Another point is that while talking of quality, we must also take into consideration what we have decided to do and use distance education. Today, I think in higher education, that's the statistics I have with me, about 18% of the students are being catered to through the distance mode. By the end of this plan, we have got very ambitious of taking it to 40%. But will we be able to do it keeping quality in concern? So the management context becomes, I think, also equally important.
I think, Professor Pawar, you are right here. The 2 points which you have emphasized are very relevant. One is this quality must be related to the goals. The second is quality should be taken as an integrated view of the whole system. Sir John, you see, you also raised this question of, you see, we have a debate about quantity and quality. You see, the more quantity means less quality. That type of a traditional wisdom is there. And another, you see, aspect is quality also means cost. It is required, more money also is required for quality. So the access question, the cost question, the quality question. I think, you see, what is the relationship between these 3 things and how the distance education system can combine the more access and also good quality. You see, it must be able to combine it. But traditionally what we feel is quality means the classroom must be 30 students only. If you have 100 students, you will not have a quality. If you have 1 lakh students, you will not have a quality. See, that means number will dilute the quality. This is the traditional wisdom in the academic circles also. What is your experience? You are also Vice Chancellor of a British Open University which is known for its quality also for 10 years. What is your experience about the Open University system and quality?
Well, I think before talking about the Open University system, it's important actually that the question of quality in education for all as Ms. Power said, is a complex thing. Because, I mean, quality is, first of all, kids don't learn if they're hungry and sick. So having kids that are fed, and this is why feeding programs at lunchtime, in which India has been a pioneer, are a very important component of quality. Obviously there's a cost to that, which repays itself. You're better off to have a classroom than to be under a tree in most places, because sometimes it rains. So that's an element of quality. Clearly, however you slice it, teachers are an important element of quality. And it's a pity that in many countries the status of the teaching profession has diminished. And then teacher, classroom, children who are well fed, you can do better if they have materials to work with. Now, the materials will cost, but those materials will probably increase the efficiency of the system over the teacher by himself. So all this has to be taken into account. I think it's clear that at higher education level, the open universities, where they have been done seriously, have increased quality and lowered cost, mainly because they operate at very large scale. But because they operate at scale, they can make the investment in these good learning materials that colleagues have been talking about. So they can get good quality economies of scale on learning materials, and often get quality and economies of scale by the way they organise the people as well, through tutorials and study centres, compared to the idea that it always has to be one teacher and a class full of students.
I think you see the education for all as an ideal goal. To achieve this, probably we have to think of different strategies. We have to learn from the international experience, and we have to involve the people, and we have to look at it as a lifelong activity, and we must be able to integrate education with the earning activities or with the developmental activities. I think this complex process of education for all requires the involvement of different sections of the society. We are very happy, Sir John, you have shared the experience of the UNESCO and the role of UNESCO, and Professor Takwale shared with us the role of ICT in the achieving the objectives. Professor Pawar rightly emphasized the importance of the quality. I think these are the different dimensions which one should look into in achieving the target of education for all.